Good afternoon. Thank you so much for being here. With great pleasure, I'd like to introduce you to someone you knew originally as a star of the big and small screen in the 90s and 2000s. She then became one of the most urgent figures of the Me Too movement for her passionate crusade against sex harassment in Hollywood. Now she's become an author and an activist. Welcome on stage, Rose McGowan, to OZY Fest 2018. Rose, thank you so much for being here with us. I said to you before we started this, I think this is one of the most important things we can talk about, and I'm looking forward to the next time with you. I want to start off with something very visual, which is you've shaved your head, you've now gone blonde, totally new look. Tell us, that's very different from what you were before. You had this glossy, long hair associated with a kind of Hollywood actress and very much a woman's hair. Tell me about what your visual change means to you and about yourself.
About 3 years ago, she had it and decided she was done and decided that I wanted to become human. I didn't want to become a man. I didn't want to become a woman. I just wanted to be human. And when I was discovered in Hollywood at 19, I was told by a woman agent that I had to have long hair. Otherwise, the men in Hollywood wouldn't want to fuck me. If they didn't want to fuck me, they wouldn't hire me. So the thing in Hollywood is that message that we get behind the scenes is what gets put on the screen and what gets put in your mind. And when I shaved my head, one of the side effects that I immediately noticed was that people could hear the words coming out of my mouth. I didn't look like, not that this is a bad thing, but I didn't look like a Kardashian, but with whiter skin. And it's being pale, you know, God, wish I had a tan. But anyway. Doesn't happen for me. But the hair thing was really a cry of freedom. And the cover of my book, Brave, is the back of my head with the razor. And that just signifies to me freedom. And so one of the things, when I realized that people could hear the words coming out of my mouth, I wanted to see if I could do that for women without them having to shave their head. And I wanted to see if people could understand it's okay to have long hair. It's okay to have any hair you want and do anything you want, but check your motives. Is it for you or is it to fulfill an ideal? And so I'm just me with short hair.
I think when we study the history books and look back on this period now, #MeToo will be a defining movement of our times. I think that's kind of set now. We're sure about that. You were one of its earliest voices. You were one of its most impassioned voices and loudest voices. You've since distanced yourself in some ways from some aspects of it. You talked about, for example, the wearing of black dresses and that maybe not being what you thought should be happening. Is Me Too just a stop on the way to something else? Do you see it as something that's now done and in the past? Do you think it had downsides? And what do you think's next?
That's a lot of questions today.
You can break them down.
But I'm going to try to round it up. So 10 years ago, Tarana Burke, who is awesome, wrote an article and started the #MeToo. Later, Alyssa Milano, a former co-star of mine, found it, and people started using that as a shorthand, men and women, and everything under the spectrum. It's a way we can communicate. Me Too, for me, is taking out the trash, and it's starting a global conversation that, you know, people thought we were in a conversation, but it wasn't. The conversation was just going in circles. Nobody was really actually having the conversation. And the reality is that we are sovereign beings with sovereign bodies, and we are, in and of ourselves, things to be protected. And what we get handed down in gender roles and handed down, you know, through movies, through television, through the Bible, through the Quran, through everything under the sun, is the message that we are separate. My movement, Rose Army, was named for, I saw this rose in Brooklyn growing in the cracks, and it was like all jerky and bent. And I thought, oh my God, that's all of us. That's all of us. We're all bent, and we have to fight to not be broken. And when we can reclaim ourselves and demand respect and demand our right to freedom and move in this society without people hurting us, without people stealing us, without predators, You know, this Me Too is cleaning out the trash. My movement is thought. My movement is consciousness and bravery. My book is called Brave. The last lines in it are, I know you can. I know you have it in you just by being brave. And it's about that. If we can reclaim who we are, claim it actually in the first place for most of us. I get asked a lot, you know, how can I be a better man? I have no idea, but I can help you be a better human. And I think that's where we're at and where we're going. And I think Me Too is incredibly important. And I think we need to keep going. We all know those people. We don't need to protect them. There are so many more. Imagine how many ones of us here in this audience we're trying to push up, right? Push up through the ranks of whatever field we're in. And how we can rise farther if we just take the rot off the top. And we have to understand our complicity. And we have to understand that it's okay to speak. And being brave, remember when you were little and you got taller? Your legs hurt, right? They hurt. They ached at night. But guess what? You got taller, didn't you? That's what change is, and that's where we're at now.
Which will be the next areas that are going to be hit by a Me Too style? You know, which are the areas that are unpenetrated so far and are unchanged and are stuck in maybe a past that should not be acceptable anymore?
Every single field. I don't think, you know, Hollywood, they're the purveyors of myth, and they're the ones that sanction it. And the government, I don't know if you've heard of some Cheeto Man, but there's some problems. But what he's done is really helpful, actually, pointing out to us the people that didn't quite believe it or get it, the good people on the left, what racism is, what it really looks like, its ugly face, what sexism is. That's sexism? Yes. And we've been saying it for a millennia. And I forgot your question. I got lost in something.
Which are the next areas? But you did answer everywhere.
Well, everybody, but I will say, my friend that's here with me today, you know, he watched this documentary, Citizen Rose, that I had on a couple months ago, and it was following me through the whole craziness of the last 10 months. And he realized he'd been being sexually harassed by a quantum physicist, one of the foremost quantum physicists in the world, sending him the most disgusting things. And after watching Citizen Rose, he confronted on text this man, and the man's response was, well, I thought you were an artist and you just got it that way. And that's just slut-shaming and shaming the victim, because all of us, men, women, and everything under the spectrum, we've all been affected, whether we know it or not, you know? And I think science, I was just talking to a woman that was about to be the head of this huge scientific organization. She worked for 2 years to get the job. And then the outgoing head of it said, no, you can't talk to the board members. You can only talk to the women. And then she said she didn't want to keep him on, so he just got her fired. This stuff happens relentlessly. And the reality is, we need the best humans to be out there, because as a society, there's a lot of sickness, and we know we can do better, so I think we just should.
I just want to pick up on something you just said, which is that Trump has helped us to get to this stage. Just go over that again, because that's going to surprise some people.
As horrified as so many of us are at living in scary times with a chessboard that's been turned over, you know, the reality is all the stuff he's doing has been going on. And the reality is he just is too dumb, and he just says it. In a weird way, as far as all his lying fake news stuff, he's telling the truth by being it, by showing it, by educating. It's scary as fuck, and I hope we can all live, but he is showing us, and it is educational, and I think it really was the media and the good guys on the left that needed to see it for what it was. When I was 14, I heard about black men being shot by cops, and I remember reading the newspaper in Seattle, which is very left-leaning, and they were like, they just complain too much. And now we have body cameras and we see the truth. But we didn't need that verification. We need to listen and honor what people are saying, because if it's a big war and it's a big bunch of speech coming out and we've been saying it for so fucking long, listen to us and hear us, God damn it, because we tell the truth. Yeah, I come with fire sometimes.
And I want to talk about, at this point, about something called disagreeableness. There's this kind of word in the ether at the moment. It's something that Jordan Peterson's talked about, Malcolm Gladwell's talked about. This idea of being disagreeable. It means ignoring your peers, not caring about what they think, being purposely difficult in order to succeed. But I know you maybe have some issues with this word, and I wanted you to talk to that.
I disagree with the word disagreeable because it keeps it for women are conditioned to not be disagreeable. So by telling people to go out and be disagreeable, women haven't learned overall, and I'm generalizing now, they've been, and I know because they did it to me, you're generally, you know, like as an example, on a lot of movies I did, I was the star of it. But they would put me number 2 on the call sheet behind the man. And I knew if I went into the office and complained about it, they would say, she's disagreeable, right? And you're scared of that. You don't want that reputation. And now it's like, fuck it. But I think by men saying be disagreeable, which I fundamentally agree with, I just think we need to come up with a better term for it. And I haven't yet. I'm still fermenting. Maybe you can all help me. But the idea for me, when I came to America when I was 10, I was called a freak every day. I had things thrown at me. The worst I got was like a liter bottle of a soda pop bottle cut off, and it was men's spit chew. And I was 11, and they threw it at my head, and it doused me Carrie style. And they were like, freak! And I was like, you're goddamn right I am. You're goddamn right. Because I am me, and that is what we are. And I don't, my mother actually at one point said, you need to try harder to blend in. And I said, why? I can take the hits. I'm strong. But there's so many of us that are so scared of standing out. But don't be scared. Just like I meet so many women that are like, oh, I have my hair, I hide behind it. And I say, what are you hiding from? You know, there's a thing when I came to this country, and I grew up in a cult. And I talk about that in my book, The Cult of Hollywood versus the cult I grew up in. And how so many people in society are really in these same cults without realizing it because it's more watered down. And since I got such direct messaging, I can see where the trigger words are used for all of us. And we can fundamentally reject this. Malcolm X said in his autobiography, why would you let your enemies teach your children? I believe in that. I believe, do not teach me to conform. Do not take my creativity from me. Do not take my intelligence from me. It will not be easier. You will be alone, but you will meet your people on your way to that bigger sandbox. It will be lonely. It will be hard, but stand up and be right and do what's right. And if you don't know what's right, think of what your better self would do and act as if until it comes true. Because that's the only way I learned.
On the disagreeableness term, hashtag OZYFest 2018, let's come up with a new term for disagreeableness so we can do it tonight.
Hashtag be free. Just be free. Be who you were meant to be before they took it. Be who you were meant to be. I meet so many people that wave their hands at me and say, I'm not on the creative side, as if it's a disease that's catching. And I think that's not true. I have an accountant. She's one of the most creative motherfuckers I know. Thank God. Goddess. But I think creativity is in all forms. And so what I say when people say that to me, I said, how old were you when that got taken? How old were you? And they said, no, that's not a good coloring. You painted outside the lines. Live outside those lines. Paint all the colors on the sun. Do you. It's a beautiful thing. And if we can impart that message to every person we come in contact with, we will actually change the world. I believe in us.
We have Roxane Gay joining us at OZYFest today. She's been on.
Wonderful.
Big shout out. She's talked about choosing not to name the individuals who raped her, gang raped her at the age of 12. Obviously, you've taken a very different tack with that. And I wondered, she talked about kind of empowering people through naming them. You've obviously taken a totally different tack. And I wondered if you wanted to talk about that, whether naming, labeling, shouting out is the right way, the wrong way. There are just different ways of doing it.
I don't think there's any right way to out a rapist, let's be real. These are criminals. These are people that steal other people. These are super predators. But the problem is the complicity machine. I will not judge anybody who doesn't want to come forward with a name. I was dealing with a very different situation with somebody who had people give him penis injections so he could go in rooms and rape. Female assistants would do it. It is hard, this stuff, you guys. It is hard to work through trauma publicly. It is not perfect, and at times it's ugly. Thank God I'm a pretty crier. There's a lot to cry about, you know, but there's also a lot to be hopeful about. Because what I want, and there is no rule, when we get stolen, part of us has been killed. And so many of us turn to drugs, and we turn to self-harm, or we turn to eating disorders or alcohol. We do anything we can to not feel the pain. And the reality of it is you are different. You can't go back to who you were. I'm really sorry. But we have to figure out a way to get that dead person out of us. And that's the only way we're going to survive and live. So for Roxanne, that's her way. For me, I needed to bring down a power structure and show other people that they could too. Okay, keep going.
I'd love for you to talk to us about your next book. It's going to be called Trust, and how your approach to trust has changed fundamentally.
That's a great question. My next book after Brave is called Trust. And that's because the man who we all know, who attacked me and so many others, he could conceivably, by hiring 3 different organizations that employed ex-Israeli spies to interfere with my life, to come to events and terrorize me with an agenda, to do everything they could to drive me into the grave so I can't testify. But what's interesting is that I realized I was at a crossroads, and I realized after having the Mossad in my life, and they're trying to put me in jail currently so I can't testify against him. That's the reality of my situation, and I'm facing 10 years in prison. It's insane. Like, the power structure is insane, and his protection came from the Democratic Party. Hollywood deified him, the Democrats protected him.
Rose, tell us about your indictment, just in case anybody doesn't know about that.
Well, I was on my way to the Women's March in D.C., and David Boyce, who is Bill Clinton's attorney, donated, it's on the record, $25,000 to the Attorney General of the state of Virginia. Shortly thereafter, or just before, because this was in the works, I got a warrant for my arrest for drug possession, which was not in my possession. The only time they've been able to really fuck with me is when I'm on a plane, because I can't use a fake name. So I was on a plane on my way the day before, this was the day of the inauguration, so it's filled with red hats, and then women, you know, going to fight the good fight, and everybody that supports that. And I got off the plane, and I had no wallet. Right away, I noticed this. I tweeted at United twice. I went to Lost and Found. Lo and behold, weeks later, my card wallet shows up with residue cocaine in it. I have done cocaine. I have never traveled with it. I've done things that weren't good for my body. I did not do it then. But if I did, which I didn't, and I knew right when I found out my wallet was missing, my back shuddered and it started spasming because I knew this was their entry and I knew this was how they were going to get me. And in Virginia, which is a very red state, they don't like people like me. They're trying to shut me down, so I'll shut up. They're trying to bankrupt me. They're trying to slander me. They're trying to ruin me. And it's they. And people say, do you hate your rapist? Absolutely, of course, duh. I hope he falls off the planet. But bigger than that is the complicity machine. And that's what we need to make sure in our own lives, that we are not complicit in helping people hurt others. We need to make sure we are good. So all I can say is I'm fighting the good fight. Cross your fingers. I'm doing my best. I'm not perfect, but I'm going to survive, and I'm going to thrive.
And so now your approach with trust is trust everyone 100%.
Exactly. I realized that when I used to meet people, it would be like you start at 0 with trust and you try to work your way up. But I realize now, because I had Israeli spies in my life, if he steals my trust in people, he's stolen everything from me. Not just my body and my spirit and my career, but my trust in humanity. So now I approach it totally differently. In a bizarre way, they've given me a gift. I now trust 100%, and I work back from there, and I hope for the best. And I see people as being 10% better than they even know they are, because I know they can get there. So it's actually, you know, a perverse kind of gift and a really good book title.
Winning both ways.
Winning.
After the suicide of Anthony Bourdain, the food writer, last month, you wrote a very powerful open letter calling on people not to blame his partner, Asia Argento. Were people blaming his partner? And what is it about the suicide rate among men, which is so much higher than among women? Why is that?
Rest in peace, Anthony Bourdain. I love you. You were my friend. And I'm really sorry that toxic masculinity trapped you. And I'm really sorry you couldn't get help. And they are blaming OZY Argento, who is my fellow freedom fighter, who is one of the bravest humans I know. And they do it because it goes back to Adam and Eve. You know, it goes back to the woman blaming bullshit that we all know about too well. Nobody can do that. Anthony had demons. And he didn't, and he lost. He lost to his demons. I think toxic masculinity, it doesn't mean you're a toxic person. It just means you're trapped in this rigid ideal. And there's a huge problem with men hitting around the age of 40. There's the spike in the suicide rate. And my own feelings about that and what I posit is really the trap. You know, a lot of people say, is what you're doing for women? And I say, no, actually it's for men. I fundamentally favor women because I favor underdogs, duh. But beyond that, men, they get trapped in these tight shirts and rigid ideals. This is what you are. This is what you have to be. You have to earn. You have to do this. You have to take care of everything. But don't express any emotion unless you're at a football game and then enrage. You're stealing boys so early. You're hurting them. And you're telling them they're superior. But there's something called the imposter complex and the imposter syndrome. And that's usually, they attribute it to famous people who feel like they don't deserve love, that they're not really like worth what everybody thinks they are, and they suffer. And I think an awful lot of men suffer from this. And it's not that they're imposters, but to be told you're superior with no actual evidence of such fact. And this kind of easier way of living. But it's not easy. They steal you. And I would implore men to fight for who they are as humans. And to fight to be able to paint every color on the spectrum. There's something called Tetrachromacy. There's only 2 people in the world diagnosed with it, and it's the ability to see more than 1 million colors. I fantasize about this disorder, although, I mean, maybe that would be like an acid trip from hell. I'm not sure. But I like to think that humans, all of us, we're literally here to paint colors on the sun. That's all we're here to do. We're here to experience life in all of its forms to its fullest before we go. And I fully believe that the suicide rate, which is so tragic, is tied to people knowing that they are more than they are, but they haven't been given the tools to be free. And I think that's fundamentally where it comes from, and it robs us as a society, and it robs men, and it's heartbreaking, and women, and anybody who commits suicide. You know, you just have to hang on and know that it can be different. Pain is temporary. It really is. Everything we go through, we're like, oh my God, I'm not going to survive this. Oh my God, I'm going to blow away into dust. Oh my God, the wind is hitting me so hard. but you do survive it. And then guess what? You stand tall. I'm really proud of all of you because I know you've all had this too. I'm really happy to be here with you today. I'm honored, truly. Thank you.
That characterization of men, some of that's damning. I mean, if I were a man, if you were a man, if you had a son or an uncle, or you'd be thinking this child or this adult in the world is really facing quite a tough, tough test, I suppose. A, do you really think that's most men or only some? And B, what can men do about this? Charlie Rose tried to get this big group together of men.
Well, that worked.
That went well. What should they do, genuinely?
I'm really tired of hearing the I have a sister, I have a mother thing, and I'm like, no, 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 no. You are a human. And once they step back, I believe, men, and realize they're human first, that takes all the power out of the male bullshit. Just like women, who can be some bullshit too, pardon my French. Because if you fit into a stereotype and you're working towards something that doesn't ultimately benefit you, but benefits that 0.0000001% at the top that's controlling everything, you're in a cult. And you have to work really hard to get unwired from it. I don't know, I just believe in freedom.
Are you overall hopeful about the future? And what does the future look like, if that's not too big a question? Do you see a time when there will be genuine equality between genders?
I absolutely believe if we can get free of the gender trap and the man-woman and then the subsections and the labeling, for me, and that might be easy to say as a non-cis woman, white woman, I don't know. I know I have that privilege. But personally, I was raised in a really interesting way in the cult that I grew up in, Children of God. I was raised without mirrors for the first 10 years of my life. I was raised as an experiment, not as a race and not as a sex. And that did form me differently. And when I came to America, I landed on a Navy base. And the first day of school, they put a pink shirt on me. They told me I was a girl and here's what I couldn't do. They made me lead the class in the Pledge of Allegiance, and they changed my name from Rosa to Rose, and they told me I didn't want to sound Mexican. I was like, what hell have I landed in? But I am hopeful because so much of that has already changed, and fundamentally we are better as a people, and fundamentally I know we can do more by going through the hard conversations and actually getting real and understanding each other. I mean, I think globalism is the key. Understanding we are more similar than we are different. And understanding we are beings of light. And we're literally here just to be part of the cosmos. So many people ask me, or they say like, God, I wish I could go to space. Where do you think you are? We're there. And if we want to go to another planet to discover higher life forms, we could stay on our own and do better. I believe in us.
Rose McGowan, thank you for coming to OZY Fest 2018. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Faye. You've done a terrific job. Thank you all so much. You're amazing.
Keep checking out our website, OZY.com. You can tweet, Facebook, hashtag OZY Fest 2018. Thank you very much.